I want to bring in Georgia Congressman Austin Scott. He's a member of the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman, your reaction to what you witnessed yesterday at the White House?
Yeah, well, I'm absolutely glad that this is happening. This has been one of President Trump's priorities for a long time. If you go back, obviously, a lot of this stuff started under Obama. It expanded under Biden, Russia's aggression with Ukraine. And, President Trump wants to put an end to it. He wants peace. He hates the killing. And I think he's doing the right thing to get to an agreement. He's the only guy that can do this in the world. The European leaders have not been able to do it. And the U.S. candidly should have been enforcing sanctions against India and the other countries that have been buying the oil through the Ghost Fleet that Russia has. And so I think sanctions on those who are buying the oil, as President Trump has indicated, are also necessary to stop the flow of cash into Russia. And it takes that cash for Putin to fund this war.
Well, certainly, the NATO commitment is key. We had U.S. Ambassador Matthew Whitaker on at the top of the hour, and that's a big piece of this puzzle. Of course, he's going to work on that. Let's talk about what's happening with the domestic issues, because the House Republican Conference is now demanding the inclusion of community project funding to avoid a potential government shutdown next month. But the return of earmarks to the annual appropriations bill is sparking a party battle between the Republicans. Some view earmarks as a return to the days of pork barrel spending, Congressman. Is this going to threaten passage of these funding bills before September 30th? And I'll give you one example. We had Congressman Warren Davidson, your colleague, on in the last hour. He's like, I can't believe we're back to talking about a lighthouse in Maine. And look, Susan Collins, to be clear here, $810 million in earmarks for Maine. That local story. This is what happens when you all get back to work. Everybody starts to demand something for their state, and we end up with adding to the deficit, not cutting, which is where the American people have become very concerned.
Well, that's an accurate statement. I've never requested an earmark. If there are grants available, I'm happy to write letters of support for my communities to the agencies, but we have a multi-trillion-dollar deficit right now. The greatest threat to every American in this country is the loss of the dollar as the world currency. If we maintain a multi-trillion-dollar deficit, that's exactly what's going to happen. And so we need to be reducing spending. We promised the people at the start of this year that we were going to reduce the deficit from $2 trillion to $1 trillion. We have not been successful in doing that, and now we're talking about earmarks, which actually the people in our party that want them would tell you they don't increase spending. I guess that's like saying if you buy something on sale, you saved, X numbers of dollars. But we're spending too much money in this country. I do not believe that a package with earmarks is going to find it easy to get across the floor of the House of Representatives. I am also watching, if you paid attention to the Democrats, many of them saying that they're not in favor of a continuing resolution or any funding bill that doesn't increase spending. So increasing spending, as far as I'm concerned, is contrary to the interests of the American citizens. I hope that we're able to keep the government open. A continuing resolution is never a good solution. It's better than a shutdown, but it's also better than increasing spending.
Well, yeah, I mean, Alicia Finley in the Journal says the risk of Reconciliation Bill 2.0. Long live the one big beautiful bill. All fear the growing prospect of a small ugly sequel. I thought that was an interesting line. But, Senator, this comes down to, in the Senate, you have those fiscal hawks. Senator Ron Johnson, he says secret earmarks are offensive. You have Senator Rand Paul. They will come out, and they did this ahead of the big, beautiful bill. They will come out and they will voice their opposition and saying that we're being fiscally irresponsible. But then when the deadline comes, which is going to be quick, September 30th is going to happen before you know it, and the pressure is going to be, oh, well, we either shut down the government or we get it passed. And that's when the deal making starts to happen. How do we not repeat that process this time, sir?
Well, this is totally different than Big Beautiful Bill from the standpoint of if those tax increases that the Democrats were demanding had been allowed to go into effect, it would have created a recession probably in the middle of the next year, right before the next elections. And so it was the tax increases that I think stopping them that helped us get the Big Beautiful Bill across the finish line. Increasing spending in a standalone bill is a totally separate issue. And so we promised the American citizens that we were going to cut the $2 trillion deficit down to $1 trillion, which is still too high. And we're talking now about special projects. And let me tell you something, every one of those special projects should be listed out for the American citizens to see. And and none of it should be hidden from anybody. And so if you want to put the special projects in, then you should take the veil off of them and show the American public where that money is being spent at. And then the American citizens need to do the calculation of the hundreds of billions of dollars, how much of that is actually coming to your state. And aren't you better off, even if you lose that maybe worthy project at a fire department, and some of them are worthy, but aren't you better off with us reducing federal spending than increasing federal spending?
The political calculation is important, too. And, House Speaker Johnson has slammed Governor Newsom in California for his proposed House map.
Right.
He promises to do what he can to stop these new congressional lines from going forward. He wrote Democrats across the nation have played politics with redistricting for decades. This is just the latest example. Republicans who are following state and federal laws will not be lectured by people who abuse the system. You also have Hakeem Jeffries saying that Homeland Security Secretary Noem is going to be one of the first to get called to testify on the Hill over immigration if the Democrats retake the House next election, the midterms. This all pivots back to my previous question about spending, because the political calculation for the midterms is that what if you get blowback from voters in the midterms who say that the Republicans didn't do enough to get debt under control?
Right. So let me give you a couple of numbers, and let me actually read these numbers so I get them right. California, 52 members of Congress. 43 Democrats, 9 Republicans. New York, 26 members of Congress, 19 Democrats, 7 Republicans. Illinois, 17 members of Congress, 14 Democrats, 3 Republicans. So that's 95 members of Congress. Approximately 20% of the congressional of Congress comes from those 3 states. 76 Democrats, 19 Republicans. So those 3 states and what they've done with reapportionment and how skewed they've done it and how abusive those 3 states have been is what has led to the president saying, hey, look, if they're going to do this so that they draw these 3 states that you have 76 Democrats and 19 Republicans, 76 to 19, then Republican states are going to have to do this same thing. I don't like the quid pro quo, if you will, but let's be very clear about this. Gavin Newsom, California, Illinois, New York, those 3 states are the states that started this. 95 members, 76 Democrats, 19 Republicans. If it was a square draw, if those 3 states did reapportionment in an equitable manner, instead of 76 to 19, it would be somewhere probably around, they'd probably have maybe 60 instead of the 76 members, and the other 16 would be Republican.
Yeah, well, and again, here we are mid-census. It's every decade. Now we're in the middle of that. So that's the other. You kind of mentioned that. Congressman Scott, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it this morning.
Thank you.
All right.